All right, good evening. This is Tuesday, May 30th, 2017. This is the Board of Education at 7 o'clock in the North Boardroom of Nashua High School. And we'll call the meeting to order, beginning with the roll call. Ms. Van Twyver, please.
Mrs. Oden. Here. Dr. Murataki.
Here.
Ms. Van Twyver's here. Mr. Hallowell.
Here.
Mr. Mosier.
I'm here.
Mrs. Ziem. Here. Mrs. Hohense. Here. Mr. Kaufman.
Here.
Mr. Farrington.
Here.
In addition, we have Dr. Brown, Mr. Frederickson, Mr. Boucher. Mr. Donovan is not here. Ms. Tomasetti, and Mr. McIntyre. We have a full house.
Is Grace here?
Oh, sorry.
We have her
No, she's
sign.
not.
We have her
Absent.
plaque. Okay, moving right along. Ms. Van Twyver, if you'd continue with the prayer, and then Mr. Kaufman, if you'd lead us in the pledge, please.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty of managing the educational institutions of our beloved city. In our common endeavors, may we find a spirit of unity and understanding which will enable us to face our multiple problems with an objective mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, Mr. Donovan is here. Okay, moving right along. Does anybody have anything that they want to remove from the consent agenda? Mr. Hollowell.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Seconded by Mrs. Oden. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Oh, man, we stepped on it. I stepped on it the first time. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden.
Yes.
Dr. Murataki.
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell.
Yes.
Mr. Mosier.
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem.
Yes.
Ms. Hohense.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Farrington.
Yes,
It's unanimous.
excellent. We have any other communications outside the consent agenda for the board? Mr. Hall, did you have something?
I have a motion.
Right now?
You want me to wait? Okay.
Okay, well, so let's get down here a little bit, and then we will. Public question comment period, 15 minutes. Items on the agenda this evening. Anyone have anything? Nope. Seeing none. Superintendent's comments. Dr. Brown.
Thank you very much, President Farrington. I have a short list here. Just a reminder that the New Hampshire Supreme Court is going to hear the Nashua School District's appeal of the PELRB decision regarding the right to privatize custodial services on June 1st. That's Thursday at 12:30 for anyone interested in attending. I will plan to be there. Also another PELRB item, and that is that the PELRB, which is the New Hampshire Public Employee Labor Relations Board, will hold an election concerning the Nashua Directors Association and its petition to have an election on June 2nd. That's Friday, and I believe it's from 12 to 2. The next item is a reminder that the Sunset Heights dedication is June 6th, and it will be at 10 o'clock, and everyone is invited to attend. There will be a public hearing on the City of Nashua's budget. That will be here at North High School in the auditorium, June 6th at 7. I hope everyone is available to attend that. And then, of course, this is graduation season. So adult ed graduation will be June 15th at 6 p.m. That is in the Nashua North High School auditorium. I'll be there. Graduation for seniors will be Saturday, June 17th. And that is at the SNU Center in Manchester, 9 o'clock for Nashua High School North, 1 o'clock for 9 for Nashua High School South, 1 for Nashua High School North. And the last thing is, I'm delighted to be, I'm sure, one of the many people to congratulate Dr. Jen Scarpati, who received her PhD from the University of New Hampshire. She is the principal at Amherst Elementary, and very, very proud of her. So if you see her, wish Dr. Scarpati a hearty congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Board response to superintendent comments. We'll just start over here and go around. Ms. Hall, you have anything? Ms. Van Twyver? Mr. Kaufman? Nothing? Nothing all the way around? Wow. Student members? Mr. McIntyre, nothing? Mr. Hallwell?
Move to suspend the rules and bring forward the HR committee recommendations.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Motion is to suspend the rules and bring up the HR agenda item. There's no discussion. Roll call, please.
Now, just a minute, please. That was Hallowell and who?
Mrs. Hohensee.
Clancy. Mrs. Oden.
Yes.
Dr. Murataki. Ms. Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell.
Yes.
Mr. Mosier.
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem.
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Farrington.
Yes. So,
Passes.
all set. Majority, Mrs. Ziem, would you like to do your report?
Yes, the HR committee was unanimous in their delight, and we're happy to recommend the approval of Michael Mahoney as principal for Bicentennial Elementary School for the 2017-2018 school year at an annual salary of $94,625.
Second.
Seconded by Mr.
Second.
Hollowell.
Yeah, sorry.
Is there any discussion? Mrs. Ziem?
I would just like to say, on my behalf at least, how delighted I am to welcome you and to, for the listening audience, 17 years with our district. We like to keep our employees that long. I hope you all stay that long. And actually, another 17 will be fine. We look forward to the next 17. Thank you.
Anyone else? I was just thinking we ought to have some kind of oath of office if we do something like this. You think?
Yeah.
We'll have to work on that. Mrs. Oden?
I just want to congratulate Mr. Mahoney. I worked for him one day a week when he was at Amherst Street years ago, and I think the Bicentennial team and the people interviewed made a very, very good choice. So congratulations, Mike.
Okay, anyone else? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden.
Yes.
Dr. Murataki.
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell.
Yes.
Mr. Mosier.
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem.
Yes.
Mrs. Hohensee.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Farrington.
Yes,
It's unanimous.
it's unanimous. Congratulations, Mike. Now, you're certainly welcome to stay for however long this show goes on.
Every roll call vote.
Every roll call vote. Mr. Hollowell alone has 11 motions, but we would understand if you decide sometime during this event you'd like to go home. So we're back at the top, and that comes back to, I believe, Mr. Hollowell on the budget.
Committee on Budget, the superintendent already commented on the public hearing, so that's the only item I have there. So moving right on to the Committee on Finance and Operations, if no one objects. Move to accept the grant from Lowe's in the amount of $29,799.69 for construction work at Dr. Crisp.
Second.
Not going to package them? Not even these two?
I'd like to keep them separate.
Okay, all right. So is it, Mrs. Oden, did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
I had a question on it. I know from my experience that in the elementary school, especially third, fourth, and fifth graders enjoy playing basketball, and I didn't see any type of a basketball hoop pole there. Do you know, do they have one and it's not part of the project, or?
I do not know if they have one. I'm going to bring up Google Maps and tell you whether I see one, or
Okay.
unless somebody knows the answer to that question.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mrs.
Well,
Ziem?
while we're waiting, I would just like to say that I've always been a proponent of Lowe's, but from now on, I'm going to buy all of my goods from Lowe's. I'm just absolutely delighted to see that they're so community-oriented, that they're generous enough to work with us on our needs. Thank you.
Mr. Donovan, you have something?
Yes, just some of you may have read something in the paper about a grant writer, et cetera. This was involved with that process, but I have been in touch with Lowe's. They sent me some information today that I signed, and so there should be no problems with this amount. We should be getting it. Actually, I actually have the check already. I just can't cash it because it's on hold. But as soon as it goes off hold, we'll cash it and move ahead with the project. But
Okay.
this was involved with that,
Okay.
what was in the paper.
Thank you. Mr. Hallwell?
I don't see one. I mean, we can ask them if there is one. There's two separate areas. So there's the place that they're building the playground, and then there's another area. It's a little hard to tell from the picture whether there's a basketball hoop there. There's not a lot of space, and then there's the big fields behind them. So it could be they don't really have a lot of space for that, for half court. Can I also comment? So we probably just need to send a note to the mayor's office. This grant was accepted by the mayor's office before it got to the Finance and Operations Committee and got to the board. Probably just a slip in the paperwork process there, but we should make sure that we're the ones that sign for grants that come to the school district, so we should just make that clear to them.
Would you like to send that as Chair of Finance?
I can do that, yes.
Okay. Anyone else? So the motion is to accept the grant from Lowe's in the amount of $29,799.69. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Dr. Murataki,
Yes.
Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell,
Yes?
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem.
Absolutely.
Lowe's don't understand what they're getting. Ms. Hohensie.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
And Mr. Farrington.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Great. And as Mrs. Seem said, thank you very much to the folks at Lowe's for the support. Mr. Hallwell?
Move to approve the building of the new playground at Dr. Chris using the Lowe's grant and additional PTO funds.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensie. Any discussion? You've heard the motion. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden.
Yes.
Dr. Murataki.
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell.
Yes?
Mr. Mosier.
I vote yes.
Mrs. Ziem.
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Farrington.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Unanimous again. Mr. Hallwell?
Move to approve the Generation Yes program utilizing Title I funds in the amount of $25,000.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensie. Anyone? Mrs. Oden?
It's an interesting program. What I would like to ensure that there is a review and feedback from teachers at the end of the year for the evaluation of its effectiveness of this program.
Are you proposing that as an amendment to the motion or just as a comment?
Well,
I think that's good, a good practice for the district to evaluate these things, so I don't disagree with that at all.
I'll second her amendment.
Well, I wasn't clear if you
I
wanted.
I didn't mean to make it an amendment, but I
yeah.
think it needs to be reviewed and see how successful it is and how effective it is, if we're going to be spending money for the program.
I don't disagree. Mr. Hallwell?
I think probably if that's the intent of the speaker, then adding it to the motion is probably the best way to do it.
Okay.
So it's,
So, restate it, please.
Move to have a review and feedback from teachers at the end of the year for an evaluation of the effectiveness of the program.
and seconded by Mrs. Hohensie. Good?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay.
Roll call.
Any other discussion? Dr. Murataki, you clear on what's going on?
Are we moving separately as an amendment to the main motion, or will it be integrated into one motion?
Yes, no, this will be the vote, the first vote will be on the amendment, and then the second vote, which will also be roll call, will be on the amended motion, assuming the amendment passes. Okay, so the first vote is on the amendment to, you want to read it, please, Ms. Van Twyver?
Let's see. She moved to have a review and feedback from the teachers for an evaluation of the program at the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Dr. Murataki,
Yes.
Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem,
Yes.
Mrs. Hohensie. Yes. Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Farrington.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Okay, now we're back to the amended motion, I think, Mrs. Ziem.
Well, can I just get a quick overview of what the gist of the program is? Generation, yes?
Okay, let me refresh my memory, Mrs. Ziem. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to give you a good summary. I don't know whether Mr.
Can I
Tyler
try?
wants to take a crack at it.
Can I try?
Sure, go ahead.
Essentially, it's a way to train our students to act as almost technology resources in the classroom. And what I liked about this program was that these young folks are going to be getting specific training on how to do it, and they'll be able to contribute to the classroom, because oftentimes there's a lot of lost time in instructional time because of technology stuff. And our young people will be able to be problem solvers. And this program actually can be extended into the middle and the high schools at cost to the district. We don't have Title I money for that. But I think it's a good thing to test out.
Thank you.
All right.
Excellent, excellent, Mr. Kaufman. Wish I had looked up sooner.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the Generation Yes program utilizing Title I funds for $25,000 and the amendment which would require a review after 1 year. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Dr. Murataki,
Yes.
Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie. Yes. Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
And Mr. Farrington.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Wow. Mr. Haltwell.
Move to approve the increase in school lunches from $3 at the high schools, $2.75 at the middle schools, and $2.55 at the elementary schools.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensie. Mr. Haltwell.
Just as background, probably most of you are familiar, the federal government wants to make sure that we're charging students something appropriate, and we're not using free and reduced lunch to somehow subsidize students who are paying. Because those costs have increased, we need to make sure that we keep pace, and so this is to keep pace with the federal government requirements.
Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I don't recall the specific number. It's about 10 or 15 cent increase. And I remember when we discussed this last year, we were pretty much assured that if there are students in need, there is assistance available. They need to make that known, but the purpose of the increase is not to deny anybody a lunch, is what I want to say. And if there are some students and families that need assistance, please make that known. To whom would they, who would, the
Building
teacher
administration.
or the building principal can help you resolve whatever help you need. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, the motion
Yes,
is to
hello?
approve. I'm sorry, go ahead, David.
Yes. Mr. Farrington, I just wanted to mention, I hear all of you except Mr. Hallowell. He keeps on fading in and out.
So are you.
I have no further questions.
Okay, well, we'll get him to sit closer to the microphone. So the motion is to approve the increase in school lunches to $3 at the high school, $2.75 at middle school, and $2.55 at the elementary schools. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Dr. Murataki,
Yes.
Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem,
Yes.
Mrs. Hohensie. Yes. Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Farrington.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Mr. Hall.
Move to approve technology purchases outlined in Mr. Fahrenkoff's May 9th memo using FY18 funds not to exceed $435,000 and to approve a $415 per month increase to get to 1 gigabyte per second internet speed.
Do we have a seconded by Mrs. Hohensee? Would you like to comment? Anybody have any questions or conversation?
I will refer you to Mr. Fahrenkoff's rather detailed explanation of not only the things we're purchasing, the things we're not going to purchase. No offense, Mr. Fahrenkoff, it was fascinating.
Mr. Kaufman.
Just for purposes of clarification, this is out of next year's budget, so the intent was to approve it ahead of time so he can jump on it once we get a final budget. So he might be able to get some of this equipment in at the beginning of the school year.
And that's where I have my question. Should we, there's some uncertainty, legal uncertainty about the future of the budget downtown. Should we hold this purchase until that has been resolved from next year's budget?
Well, if I don't have any money, I won't buy anything.
Good idea.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, or you
in
could do
worst-case
it
scenario.
contingent upon the approval of the budget, the fiscal year 18 budget, sort of as it is or as the mayor has proposed it to be.
I think it's kind of implied in the motion.
Think so? Okay. Mrs. Eam?
Do we know, will that get through in a year? I mean, will they resolve that issue,
I don't know. I don't know. It's just a question that occurs to me if we have to
Good
make
question.
significant changes, do we want to? Because the way this is worded, Mr. Fahrenkoff, and rightly so, is going to go out and get this stuff purchased so we can get it in place in time for the school year to start. Mrs. Oden?
I'd like to move to table.
I'll second. Does it need a second?
Didn't mean to cause this kind of problem.
Now, is she going to tell us why she wants to do that?
Well,
No discussion.
as long as we have another meeting before, we have 2 in June.
We got 2
I'm
in
assuming.
June.
So
Okay?
that'll be all right.
The motion is to table this. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Dr. Murataki,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell,
No.
Mr. Mosier,
No.
Mrs. Ziem,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee,
No.
Mr. Kaufman,
No.
Mr. Farrington.
I guess since I caused all this, I should vote yes.
Was that a yes, sir?
It's a yes.
4, 6. No.
No.
6, 4, 6,
Can't-
3.
9, yeah.
Can't have 4, 6.
What's the count?
You're on the school board?
4 nays and the rest yays. 5. Thank you.
So it's 5-4, the motion passes, the original motion is tabled.
Right.
Okay.
You are your list.
All right, move to approve the purchase of the hardware necessary to add the Title I program located at the First Church in Nashua to the existing Nashua School District network. Why is there no dollar value associated?
Second.
I didn't remember that.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee.
Donovan. So I'm pretty sure there must be a dollar.
Mrs. Hohensee?
There's a dollar amount on the handout that you gave us.
What is that dollar amount?
Yes,
right
it was
now?
$6,738.
In the amount
And
of
95 cents.
in the amount not to exceed $6,800. Just to make Mr. Donovan happy. Doesn't like dollars and cents.
Don't like pennies.
Mrs. Ziem?
So we're talking about the telephone? They don't have a telephone system over there? What are we talking about?
No, we're talking about internet. It's to put them on the
The city, the
district network?
school-wide
What's the-
internet, yeah, because they're at the First Church, so they don't have the same speed as everyone else. They just have what you'd have at home.
It's to put them on the fiber loop that the city has.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Coffin?
Thanks. I was to Mrs. Ziem, it's kind of the connections you have at home on steroids, instead of an individual for more like a building to support at least 24 connections. But it's similar equipment, just scaled up for lots more people.
Thank you.
And I don't believe it has anything to do with the phone system. This is strictly internet connectivity.
Okay, no further discussion? The motion is to approve the purchase of hardware necessary to add the Title I program located at First Church in Nashua to the existing Nashua School District network at a cost not to exceed $6,800. Roll call, please.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Dr. Murataki?
Yes.
Dan Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem?
Yes.
Ms. O'Hancy? Yes. Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Mr. Hallwell?
Move to approve purchase of technology, Chromebooks, iPads, and projectors utilizing Title I funds in an amount not to exceed $246,000.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Oden and then Mrs. Ziem.
I realize technology is important. It's what these kids are going to be using, but I'm concerned that a lot of Title I money that could be spent on after-school tutoring for our students that are falling below grade level, that need that extra assistance, are not being serviced. And I'm not sure the technology is replacing teachers, and I think that extra support for our students during the school year, possibly the summer, should be spent that way at this point. We've bought an awful lot of Chromebooks, an awful lot of technology, but I don't think they replace a teacher, so I'm not going to be supporting this.
Mrs. Ziem, you had your hand?
Well, I was going to ask for a little more detail about, is that all the elementary schools, so that,
It's a Title I school.
oh, just the Title I schools, thank you. That was
That's the
probably a
elementary,
motion.
right?
I'm sorry?
But there's only 5 Title I schools.
Yeah. Mrs. Van Twyver.
Didn't we authorize a big bundle of money last time for IT? The money that was the first year that the director took over, she had, I thought it was like $500,000 or something like that. Mr. Donovan, could you speak to that, please? I mean, we're scooping a lot of money out of Title I.
But the purchase last year or the year before, that was a one-time sum of money that was given to us for that through the Title I we got the money back through the state. So that was a sort of a different thing. This is part of the grant that they wrote for this year using funds for that. So it was Title I money, but it was an extra set of money that we received that we had to spend very quickly. And if you're going to spend a large amount of money very quickly on a grant, you really have to make a purchase because the salary's spread out through a whole year.
I mean, this is an awful lot of money coming out of the Title I, as far as I'm concerned. And I understand that the middle schools have a shortage of Chromebooks too, so,
But this is Title I funds, you couldn't use them at the middle school.
well, I don't know.
Was this recommended by the
Mrs.
director?
Fulton. Yes.
Okay.
By who?
Mrs. Fulton, the Title I director. This is all written into the grant. This isn't
Yeah.
anything that came out of, that other purchase did last year. That was those funds were not with us at the beginning of the year. This was planned all year long.
That was not my understanding, but I'll talk with Mrs. Fulton about it.
Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. Is there a specific curriculum need to drive this technology? One of the things that I've been concerned about is that we purchase technology because there's money lying around to purchase it, where somehow the need is to get more computers. I would rather feel as though we have a very specific curriculum need that would be filled by having computers. And I would like to see pretty much a correlation between curriculum requirement and the technology used to support it, rather than just, when we've done this before, there was a Chromebook cart where I think it was a textbook, and the vendor was expensive. We ended up repurposing some money. We spent $30,000. We chose to spend in a different way, which I'm with Ms. Oden on this. I'm going to vote no.
Mr. Hallwell?
So we talk a lot about the need for making sure that students have access to technology that are basically on free and reduced lunch. That's exactly what the Title I program is geared towards. So this is putting that technology in their hands. A lot of this is, Chromebooks for them to use. It's a plan that was put together by our director. So I'm in support of it. There are other funds being used for other purposes. This is the technology piece of that. And we get these now because the money will be spent over the summer to make sure that everything's available in the fall.
Mr. Van Twyver?
I'm not going to support this either. I want to talk to Ms. Fulton before, because that money the last time was a big lot of, it was huge. And I'm not sure that where these books are going, where all this stuff is going, I don't think that money last time was used for Title I schools.
It was.
It had to be.
Yeah,
It's a
it
Title
was.
I funding. It has to go to Title I schools.
Well, I had a conversation with Ms. Fulton one time about that, and I'm not going to support this. We still have another month, right? Another meeting?
Okay, Mrs. Oden, Mrs. Hohensee, Mr. Hallwell.
I believe that last year it was over $900,000 we spent on Chromebooks.
Yeah, it was a big bundle.
It was over $900,000. And as I said, we have a goal. Our number one goal is to have students reading on grade level by the end of third grade. And I know from experience that if you have the right people tutoring those students after school, it makes a difference. And a lot of those students in Title I schools do not have that support at home. So I would ask you, if you really want to have students reading on grade level by the end of third grade, you have to give them the support, and that's what Title I money is for. I understand what you're saying about they should have technology, but I think Title I, by the large amount of money they spent last year, has put a real good dent in that, and I will not support this.
Mrs. Hohensee?
Thank you. I was wondering if, instead of voting this down, could we send it to committee, perhaps HR, where they could discuss it in more detail and any other options that include personnel, so the board gets or at least the committee gets a better feel for how the money could be used, rather than just reject a proposal that she put before us.
Mr. Hallwell?
Move to table.
Thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Mosier. The motion is to table the Title I computer equipment. Roll call.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Dr. Murataki?
Yes.
Van Twyver votes yes to table. Mr. Hallowell?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem?
Yes.
Ms. O'Hensey?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
It's unanimous to table.
Okay.
Do you have a point of
Mrs.
order?
Hohensee?
I just want to know, when we table things, do we ever take them off the table, or they just come back on as an agenda item?
You have to take them off the table.
Be a
Okay.
motion to take from the table.
Okay, because we don't have a list of the items that are currently on the table to assist the boards into knowing what is there to be removed.
Do you believe there are any other motions that are?
Well, we
Oh,
just
sure.
did two today,
I know
so.
they can
Yeah.
possibly be on our agenda this
They're
evening.
in the
as
minutes.
well.
Oh, okay.
It'll be in the minutes.
We
I
don't-
just, as
you're
an
right, we don't
assist.
normally do that.
As an assist, since we're starting to pile them up, I just want the mechanism to be easy for,
All you have to do is review the minutes.
Okay. Mr. Hallwell?
Well, I was going to say,
Oh, I'm sorry.
the reason that I tabled it is, guess I would ask administration, whoever that is, but at the time when it has to come forward, that we have Ms. Fulton come and explain it. I will point out to the board members that wanted to vote this down, that we all got a copy of the Title I and Title II funding as part of the budget process, and the amount of money we were spending on technology was in that budget. So that's why I didn't think it was going to be a controversial vote.
Okay, next item, summer writing.
Recommendation to approve a summer writing institute with the Columbia University Reading and Writing Project utilizing Title I funds in the amount of $40,800.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Any discussion? Oh, go Mrs. Ziem and then Mrs. Hohensee.
Can you just give me a quick, sorry, Mr. Hollowell, but I'm nosy tonight. Who will qualify for that? How extensive will it be for that 40,000?
So it's training staff members for doing how to teach writing.
Okay.
Last summer we had 50 staff members that were trained by 2 staff developers. This summer they want to do 100. I think when they did the program last year, they felt it was useful. So Columbia University sends 4 staff developers from their train the teacher program, groups of 25 over 4 days. And since Title I funding be used for the workshop, the Title I teachers will have the first choice as to whether to take the training with the unfilled slots available for non-Title I staff. Teachers will not be paid to attend this training, so it's voluntary.
Sounds wonderful, thank you.
Before we go, Mr. Boucher.
I just wanted to add that yes, indeed, we do have 100 slots, and I believe at this time they're all filled. If a teacher were to go out on their own and attend this training, they'd be charged, I believe it's $800 for the training. We're able to get them trained here on our turf for about $400 apiece, so it's a very good deal for the district.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hohensee, did you have something?
Yes, I did. I wanted to thank Mrs. Fulton and Mrs. Aesop for showing me these materials. They were very kind to let me come and review them, and I was very pleased to be able to see them, and I will be supporting this.
Okay. Anyone else? So the motion is to approve Summer Writing Institute with the Columbia University Reading and Writing Project utilizing Title I funds for $40,800. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Dr. Murataki?
Yes.
Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell?
Yes.
Ms. Mosher?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
And Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Excellent. Making good progress here, Mr. Hallwell.
Move to approve the purchase of Eureka Math consumables using FY18 funds in the amount of $37,828.59. Sorry, Mr. Donovan.
Second by anyone?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Anybody have any questions or comments? Mr. Kaufman?
Well, I guess maybe consistency with the previous motion about expending next year's funds. If we chose to table the previous expenditure for FY18, should we do the same here?
Well, go ahead, Mr. Hallwell.
Well, my answer would be no, because these are consumables that we will absolutely need next year, as opposed to an upgrade in technology, which if we don't have, technology just doesn't work as well. So, and it's a smaller amount of money, so it's a matter of how many things you want to pile up here.
Mrs. Ziem?
So who actually gets them? What grades? Is it middle school? Is it
Elementary.
Mr.
elementary?
Boucher?
The staff has identified selected pages from the existing workbooks. If we were to purchase the workbooks for the entire district, it would be about $100,000. The cost of about $20 per student, 5,000 times 20. The staff felt that not all of the materials contained in these books would be used, so they've identified the selected pages. They've done mock-ups of workbooks for each unit at each grade level, so every child will get a set of workbooks to last through the school year.
And it's K to 5.
K-5, right?
Thank you. That sounds wonderful, actually. And thank the teachers for doing that.
Mrs. Oden?
I just have one question. If a teacher looks at the consumable that we're printing and finds this a page or a few pages that that individual teacher would like to use, do they still have the book that they can copy those pages?
They have the existing books, and they also have access online to the materials.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so the motion is to approve the purchase of Eureka Math consumables using FY18 funds in the amount of $37,828.59. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Dr. Murataki?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem?
Yes.
Ms. O'Hensy?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Mr. Hallwell.
Move to accept and place on file the Student Activity Fund's accounts audit and to approve the April 2017 transfer report.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Dr. Murataki?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem?
Yes.
Ms. O'Hensy?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
It's unanimous on both motions.
Excellent. Mr. Hallwell, you're finished.
Yes.
Committee on Policy, Ms. Van Twyver.
Yeah, hold a sec, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let me get my paperwork out here. Okay, the committee met, and we have 3 different policies that we approved. First one is JLDBA, Behavior Management and Intervention, and it's a brand-new policy required by the state legislature and the Board of Education. Behavior Management and Intervention, and the chair moves to approve this policy.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Is there any discussion? Motion is to approve policy JLDBA. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Dr. Murataki?
Yes.
Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
I say yes.
Mrs. Ziem?
Yes.
Ms. O'Hensy?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
And Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Motion is unanimously approved.
Thank you.
The next one is policy JKA-R. It is a procedure for the use of child restraint and seclusion. The changes to this policy were on page 7 and 8. 2 paragraphs were added. This has to do with the reporting of a violation of restraint and seclusion when that person has reason to believe that the action of another constituted a violation of the restraint and seclusion. And then paragraph 1 on the next page, which tells the reporting requirements in case of a injury or death to a child. We now have to verbally notify the Commissioner of the New Hampshire Department of Education, the Attorney General, and the New Hampshire Disability Rights Center as soon as possible. And a written report has to be made within 5 business days and must include the information contained with the incident report. The chair recommends the approval of JKAA-R as amended.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Mrs. Oden, you have something?
Yeah, I have a question. Did we get teacher and staff input on this? Because they're the ones that have to restrain the children, and I know there's been some frustration in the past about some of the policies, so I was just wondering if we get some input from staff?
This is a requirement from the state. I'm assuming that there was, that
Ms.
the...
Frederickson.
Yeah, we actually went to, had Mark Lakea look at it, who wrote the original policy, but the writing in there is a requirement by law, so there isn't a lot of flexibility on it as to what we could do.
But we did have an employee go over it.
Yeah, actually, it came from the employee who wrote the original one, and he's been It was Mark Lakia.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you.
And this was a topic was it last year we went through this?
Yes.
And we've,
JKAA was approved last year.
yeah. Okay, so it's had quite a bit of discussion in the district. Anyone else? Okay, so the motion is to approve policy JKAA-R. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Dr. Murataki?
Yes.
Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensi?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. The next one is ECA-R. It's the district security procedures. The name has been changed. And the amendments to this, we added a new paragraph on video surveillance. Dictates what you can do with a video, where you can place the cameras for observing people who are authorized to have access to the videos and the surveillance monitor. And then on page 6, we talk about who has authorization to access the recordings and so forth. So the chair recommends the approval of ECA-R.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensie. Mrs. Hohensie?
It wasn't just the chair, it was the committee that recommends passage of the, because you said the chair recommends, but it was the
I
committee.
just made the motion.
In the form of the motion today.
Right, but the whole committee had supported it. So I'm
Correct.
just-
All right. Any other, Dr. Murataki, was that you trying to buzz in?
No, it's not.
Okay. Anyone else? Motion is to approve policy ECA-R. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Dr. Murataki?
Yes.
Van Twyver votes yes. Mr. Hallowell?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensi?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Passes unanimously. That's all.
Great. Committee on Curriculum and Evaluation, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. Mr. Frederickson, can you, as part of my last bullet item here, I want to try and put something up on the projector. So,
Something we don't have in our packets?
something that was, we tried to present at the committee, and we didn't have technology available, and it will help clarify exactly the format of the survey, which was a question. I'm sure it's going to come up again during discussion. So the first recommendation from the committee, well, let me say I chaired the committee in the absence of Dr. Murataki, and that's why I'm doing the report tonight. Our first recommendation for the committee is to accept and place on file the career pathways sequence as presented to the committee.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensie.
Thank you. And if I may speak to
Certainly,
that, thank you.
certainly.
So the career pathways, there are 16 of them. Essentially what it does for our students who have a particular career interest, it helps to lay out a specific sequence of courses to help you realize your goal through the course selection process and prerequisites. All that's been laid out for you. So you really have it really is what it says is a career pathway. Take these courses and you will be well prepared to pursue this specific particular thing. It could be, there's 16 of them, as I said. So agriculture, food and natural resources, AV technology and communications, business management, finance. I won't go into all of them, government and public administration. So this represents a lot of work by our curriculum folks, and we accept it and place that on file.
You're approving the career pathways.
Well, actually, we did not approve them. We accept, what was brought before the committee was to accept and place, I'm sorry, so to accept them and place them on file, sorry, yes.
Mrs. Oden.
I have a question. Will these be in the footsteps to the future or the program of studies that it's now called for students and parents to look at?
Ms. Frederickson.
I can respond to
Oh,
that.
go ahead.
The reason why the recommendation was to receive and accept was that Mrs. Mahar, who is leaving her current position, had completed her work and had not heard back on any last-minute corrections, typos, et cetera. So it's not the final document. Somebody would have to make that judgment sometime in the future as to whether they are final. And at that time, that information could be published and shared.
More?
Well, we certainly wouldn't want to put something in that's not finished if there's going to be changes to it, but I hope if there are changes and it becomes a final document, that it ought to go out to students and parents, because I think it's good, it's nice to have this. So all this work would not be shared if it doesn't go out to our students and parents?
Where would the next step come from? Directors of guidance?
I believe that was the last department she was waiting to hear back from, yes.
Okay. Mr. Howell?
But then does it end up in the program of studies? Otherwise, I'm not sure how it helps them.
Well, you have I believe you have all of them in the packet tonight, so you see it's a pretty substantial amount of information. Not sure what the best method might be to share those program of studies. May not be. They may be buried if they're in that document. They'd have to find another means to share them, but I agree, they should be shared. It's valuable information.
And the only reason I ask is because we approved the program of studies. So it's a way to have this board vote to put them in, as official recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
But they're important enough so they should be broken out and brought to the attention of the students, and I would think that would be something that the directors of guidance would be responsible for. Or
The coursework that's listed on each of these pathways, they're high school courses, so that's the logical place for them.
Sorry, did you have something?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Couldn't you put them on the web page under the student? Sounds like a good place to me.
Okay, so the question I think that comes to mind is who's going to make that decision as to where it goes next? I mean, if we accept them, they just end up in the minutes. And Ms. Van Twyver?
Mr. Farrington?
Yes,
This is David Murataki.
sure.
Yes, I thank Mr. Kaufman for, bringing these points up. I personally feel very strongly that the Career Pathways Project is an exceptionally useful one for this district, and I'd like to see it move forward. And as soon as we in the Curriculum and Evaluation Committee receive the final, approval from the guidance department, I think that one thing that could happen is that it could return to C&E, and that we would then go ahead and move approval to the full board. That's my thought, anyway. Thank you.
So your view, if I could just
Review.
clarify, is that the next input should come from directors of guidance?
That's correct.
Okay.
I believe that was essentially the pending action that essentially stood in the way of our final committee approval and recommendation to the full board that we approved as opposed to place on file.
Mr. Kaufman?
Dr. Murataki, may I ask you a question?
Certainly.
So would you recommend we just hold this in the Curriculum and Evaluation Committee pending the final document from guidance?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm playing with the mute button. So either we could do that, or we could do what we're doing now, which is to basically, approve and place on file, and then essentially bring that back into committee when we are ready to go with that final step. But I think that the information that we have at this time is useful and certainly worth publicizing. I'm done.
Okay. Ms. Van Twyver and then Mr. Hall.
Yeah, Dr. Murataki, did you say approve? I think, from my understanding, they're just going to accept this report. and place it on
I
file.
misspoke.
All right, so you're just saying to accept the report and place it on file
Right.
until guidance comes with a final copy.
That's correct. So I would support the motion on the floor.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Hall?
So I'm not going to support the motion because I just think it's confusing that we're accepting it and placing it on file when it's something that eventually we're going to approve. So I just think it ought to, I would like, my view would be the maker of the motion should withdraw his motion. It should stay in committee, and when they get the feedback, that's when we bring it to the board for approval, just so it's a clear process.
I'm inclined to agree, and then I think somebody needs to communicate to the directors of guidance that we're waiting for some input from them. Otherwise, it's just going to get put on file. Mr. Kaufman?
Dr. Murataki, would you have any objection if we follow Mr. Hollowell's strategy on this?
None.
Okay, if that being the case, if I may withdraw my motion.
Who was the second?
I withdraw the second.
Okay. Mrs. Oden?
Would it make more sense to just send it back to committee until it's ready to bring to the board?
I think that's, by withdrawing the motion, they're going to take it back to committee, and then there needs, like I say, I think there needs to be some communication with directors of guidance, excuse me, so that they can understand that there's something expected for them. All right, everybody's good?
Okay, thank you. So the next recommendation, the committee, I move to recommend the approval of the curriculum meeting, recommend to approve the Curriculum and Evaluation Committee meeting twice a month.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hornsey.
This came up, this was a recommendation Dr. Murataki suggested. We have a backlog. At one time, we had about 24 different items. We had a session maybe a month or two ago where we really put on the table all the discussion things that we wanted to have. And I believe at that time, the list was somewhere around 24 items. I think we've chipped away 4 of them, and we brought forth the recommendation to meet more frequently so we can address the backlog that committee perceives it has, which I think it does have. And that's why the recommendation was to meet twice a month.
I guess I'll just jump in here. I'm going to vote against this because I think this committee can meet as frequently as they want to get the work done, and when the work's done, then they can go back to one meeting a month or none. I'd like to encourage people to run for the board in the fall, and by putting more meetings on the schedule, we're sure not going to do that. So I don't think there's any requirement for this. I think if you need 2 meetings a month, you schedule them. If you need 3, you schedule them. And then when you get caught up, you go back to your regular. So, Mr. Howell?
Yeah, pretty much what Mr. Farrington said. I mean, it's in the policy that they only meet once, so the more proper way to do this would have been to have changed the policy, but I don't think there's any reason to change the policy because the policy says it'd be 1 time a month or basically as frequently as the chair believes they need to meet in order to meet their goal. I also think this board needs to think about if you look at any other Board of Education, nobody spends as much time at Board of Education meetings as Nashua. I almost guarantee it. Between subcommittee meetings and ad hoc meetings and regular meetings, it scares people away from public service. And I think we need to be far more efficient in the way we operate.
Mrs. Hornsey?
Thank you. I think this motion and the next one to set particular dates were just made in respect to the chair who was missing. This was his intention, so we were trying to be transparent, put it on the table, what the intention was to let the public know, and set some dates. I'm comfortable removing my second and just leaving that as an understanding. I don't believe, as you say, that the full board needs to vote on it.
Hello, this is David Murataki.
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, I agree with both, your earlier comment, Mr. President, and Ms. Hornsey. So I would also be comfortable if the second and third bullets were simply withdrawn.
So move.
So
Okay.
what was that?
They're going to withdraw the motion.
Both of them or just one?
Well, one so far.
He's not going to make the other one, and then
Okay.
it won't be up.
Okay.
Well, that date goes away now. Okay, so the last thing had to do with kindergarten, and if you can bear with me, well, let me just put it out there. The recommendation is to approve for administration to develop a survey for kindergarten teachers, reviewing the 90 standards, and report the results of the survey to the Curriculum Evaluation Committee by the end of the school year.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Mr. Kaufman?
Thanks. So Dr. Moritaki had drafted, which the committee never saw because the technology was unavailable. And if you'll indulge me right now, I'd like to show you the format of the survey, which Dr. Moritaki had created. It's just like one page will convey the format.
Can I, just a point of, I don't know whether it's a point of order, just a question. So I have a copy of a survey in my packet. Did everybody else on the board get that paper copy also?
Ms. Hohensee?
That is not the survey that Dr. Murataki put together. It's a PowerPoint survey. This is just a rough text survey. This has all 90 standards in it, so it's more complete. But what Dr. Murataki did is he just gave a couple of pages of what the survey would look like visually as a jump start for the committee to have a discussion. But we didn't have that discussion because it was never projected, and there were no copies made for the committee.
We were technology
Okay.
deprived
Okay.
in that meeting, and
So does that mean the screen's coming down?
yeah, so you guys are gonna have to, and I hope I can connect. It's the first time I've tried it.
Well, I think I'll wait and see if you connect.
Can I suggest that while we're waiting for Mr. Kaufman to connect, we could go to new business?
We have some?
Mr. Farrington?
Yes. You want me to move?
It's up to you.
Yeah.
It's usually pretty, what's up?
No, go ahead. Oh, Elizabeth, we're going to have to, we can sit behind the screen.
That would be fine with me. I've
Meaning
seen
to
it.
Talk to Alderman McCarthy about this setup.
There is another screen, you know, but it's not for
Okay.
us. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm going to scoot.
You may speak on my behalf as well, Mr. Hollowell.
I don't think it's going to make any difference. It's all built now, but
Yes.
next time.
Money spent.
You're going to stay right there?
Need to cut the light off? Thank you. Wow.
So, Dr. Moritaki, I'm projecting your 6 or 8 slide presentation, so you know it's here.
Okay, thank you.
Come on, move down. Okay. So Dr. Moritaki's proposal was to form a committee that would obviously include the kindergarten teachers, the curriculum specialists that know this material the best. And one of the things we had spoken of in committee in general was to conduct a review of all curricula from K through 12. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Murtaki, but this is where you chose to start. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. As many of you know, I've been a strong supporter of full-day kindergarten. And this means that not just our Title I schools, but all of our schools would then be teaching our kindergartners for the full-day curriculum. But at the same time, I've also heard voices from the community, including members of this board, that have expressed concern about what we are teaching, whether or not it's during the half day or during the full day. There have been comments like we probably should be incorporating more playtime into the kindergarten curriculum. We also hear concerns about, with all of the requirements that kindergarten teachers are supposed to be teaching according to our current requirements, which include like 90 elements of the Common Core, that it becomes difficult to teach or to have the time to teach the children adequately and have enough time for play. There were a number of concerns that were expressed. So I felt that it would be a good idea for this district to basically go ahead and pull together the kindergarten teachers and to have them review and comment on what they think about the requirements that they were required to teach, and also be able to reflect on what they may feel should be taught in addition to or instead of these requirements. And this included the ability to comment on, yes, this requirement should be taught to all of the kindergarten students, or this requirement should be taught to students when we believe that it is developmentally appropriate for these students. Because, you know, the fact of the matter is that some items like teaching algebra, algebraic operations in kindergarten, could, for some students, be deferred to first or second grade, and still, you know, have plenty of time to bring them up to speed and having the algebraic skills that they need by secondary school. Anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Kaufman, for having that projected.
You're welcome. So what I'm displaying now is your slide for kindergarten materials, say counting and cardinality standards. And just so the board and the public would get an idea of the format that you had proposed. So as I understand it, the K.CC1. is the first Common Core standard requiring counting to 100 by ones and by tens. And the yes is that, yes, this is something we definitely want our young people to learn. The next column is a question mark with an asterisk, and that is intended to capture the opinion from the reviewers. No, I don't think this subject may not be developmentally appropriate, would be how they could, it may at sometimes be appropriate and other times not. The no meant, no, I don't think we should, and clearly they wanted Dr. Mortaki allowed for the final column of remarks. So that which is in the packet, those 90 standards, those questions, those are all the standard questions from the Common Core standard. Dr. Mortaki's suggestion was to ensure that they were grouped by topics such as this, and very simply listed down the left with these several columns, which would allow the teachers and the reviewers to indicate, you know, their preference, if you would. So the text of the standards would be in the left-hand column, as is in that document, but this reflects the columns of choice that are proposed. I'll just cycle through the other slides. This is just another example of informational text standards, same layout, but as you'll notice,
Mr. Kaufman, can
yeah.
you up to views and probably make it do full screen there?
Full screen? You want slide only?
Only,
Is that what you're
I
asking?
think so, yeah. I don't know this format, but
Okay. Is that better?
yeah.
Okay. Now I don't know what I have next.
Well, now you just hit the arrow key and it should go down to the next
When
one.
it behaves. It's just saying, sorry.
Just use the arrow key instead of
I am.
trying to.
And I think all you're going to get is, let's see, I'll just play this. Go to the next slide. There we go. Okay. There were additional questions, and I know this is a topic of discussion. So this was intended to go to committee for the Committee of Educators, Curriculum Specialists, Teachers. to determine what the survey content would be, and there were committee members that wanted these additional questions asked. So the first one had to do with iReady testing being administered in kindergarten. And I do recall that we did not approve that this year, and if I recall correctly, that was the recommendation of Mr. Boucher, that he thought that it was not necessary. The next questions have to do with how many recess periods. Next question, do you feel recess before lunch should be scheduled in your classroom? And then should recess be taken away from kindergarten students for discipline purposes? And then finally, just a blank sheet showing, the requirements and the format. So that was what we had hoped to show in committee, and asking for approval here to ask the administration to formulate a survey and conduct it before the end of the school year. Thank you. We can undo the presentation if you like and go back to daylight here if you like.
Well, can I ask a question? So what does NA mean then?
Not applicable. So if
But how
somebody,
could what would it mean to say, if I have a requirement that's listed, why would it ever be not, what would not applicable mean as opposed to yes or no or I'm not sure?
Hello, this is David Murakaki. The categories were simply intended to be a starting point for discussion. What I had in mind for not applicable is, I don't teach this. That could be one possible response. One of the things that I know, having spoken with some teachers, in particular kindergarten and first grade teachers, is that we've had the Common Core essentially layered into our teaching requirements here in the Nashua School District for a couple or 3 years at this point. So in many respects, the teachers probably know what that list of requirements happens to be, whether or not they're from Common Core or from our social studies curriculum or whatever it is, kneecap science. What I believe is that this new set of standards that are brought into the Nashua schools at a time when we thought that it was a mandate from the state, in essence, may represent a list that not every teacher agrees with. And I think that a type of survey like this, that was essentially designed in a neutral form, that would allow a teacher to basically go ahead and relatively freely respond to what he or she thinks should be happening in his or her classroom, I think is a good thing to do. Whenever you have a multiple choice questionnaire, there should always be at least one category or box, like the NA, that indicates that you don't believe that that particular question relates to you in your classroom. And if you hit the NA, that also might trigger a response in the remarks column. That would be like a free format type of input. That's it. I'm done.
I'll just ask, any other questions or comments?
I have more, but maybe we could put that up before.
Okay.
So people can resume their seats.
Okay, so we don't need this any longer? Is that okay? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is David Murakaki again. I have one other observation, and that is that
Hang on a second, David. The screen's going up. Okay, go ahead. David?
Dr. Murtaki, you still there? Well, we're waiting for...
I don't know what happened there. Didn't mean to make him hang up.
Dr. Murtaki, are you there?
Okay. Well, he had a chance to talk. Anybody else got any comments? Mrs. Hohensee.
Thank you. These are math and science standards, and we typically review standards from time to time. It's not something that's ever cast in stone. I know the state's reviewing them, and it's going to be looking for district input. So a survey would be helpful in terms of giving our district's input. Manchester is reviewing these standards, and they've had a meeting on the subject, and they're also concerned about the standards and making sure that there's more playtime. They've had full-day kindergarten for a while. So it's not unreasonable to make sure that students get the best instruction by reviewing the standards. Earlier this year, we got a report from our kindergarten teachers that some of our students were crying over the iReady tests, either this year or previous years. So we need to figure out if this is an indication that there's a problem with some of the standards. And it's another indication that we should take a closer look. Well, we did now. So teaching practices shouldn't cause anxiety and stress in our children. Sometimes some educators have indicated that the standards are not developmentally appropriate. They're not based on early childhood research for literacy development and could be damaging to this child's natural creative abilities. What we've got now is second grade standards and first grade primarily being put into kindergarten. Some kids thrive, others might not. It's good to take a pause before we expand our program and make sure that all our teachers can give us some feedback. They're the ones that have had boots on the ground on a day-to-day basis. So if we get feedback from them, we'll know whether we're moving in the right direction. There are no longitudinal studies. As Dr. Murataki pointed out, we've only had this in our district 2 to 3 years. Longitudinal studies are longer. There's many interesting longitudinal studies, but they're not Common Core specific. So we can't use that as an indicator of what we need to do. It's also a time-sensitive issue. The data needs to be collected before the end of the school year while teachers are available to complete the survey. And it's usually considered best practice to use data to drive our decision-making. So again, this cannot happen unless we collect the data. So I just think it's a basic, prudent thing to do. As to the 4 questions the superintendent had asked prior, which ones Dr. Murataki had put into the survey and which ones I did. Number 1 and 4, I contributed. Number 2 and 3, Dr. Murataki contributed. He had how many recesses and the recess before lunch. Those were his 2. Mine were iReady based and recess and discipline. Because I know that was an issue in committee, that which one was which, and given the tempo of the discussion, I didn't recall at that time whose were whose.
Mr. Hall.
Is Dr. Murataki with us or gone?
So I guess I don't believe that there's such an immediate need that we need to rush to put together a survey that we've already had 3 or 4 questions on. I don't think you create a survey that's about curriculum standards and mix in a bunch of other questions that are unrelated to curriculum standards. I also think that what ideally would happen would be, number 1, our kindergarten teachers aren't the only teachers that are qualified to teach kindergarten. So we have other staff that may have opinions as well. I also think it's not the kind of thing that teachers should be doing in isolation. There may be questions. I mean, there's standards there. We have teachers of different abilities. I I think having them have an opportunity to be together and discuss it as a whole, I mean, if we're talking about this being sort of a ground-up look at kindergarten, that's really the way it should be. It shouldn't be some rushed, multiple questions survey where I sometimes say it's not applicable to me. I don't even understand what that column means. I'm not sure I understood Dr. Murataki's explanation. So I don't, you know, you saw on the screen there 4 or 5 pages. I assume we've got to go another 10 pages before we finish all the, or another 5 or 6 anyway, before we finish all the standards. There's 90 standards for them to go through. I laughed when I saw the 100% anonymous participation. I wonder if there's ever been a survey in this school district that we've ever gotten 100% participation in. I doubt it. So, and then I think you have to ask the question is, what's your plan? Now you get all these surveys back and say there'll be some standards that some teachers say, no, we shouldn't teach that, and other teachers say we should. What's the plan? Is it, 61%? When 61% of the teachers say that we should use it, we'll use it? I don't necessarily have a problem with the concept of looking at the standards. I do have a problem with trying to do it in the next 20-something days. Number one, I just don't think you're going to get the response you think you're going to get. And number two, we've got administrators leaving and administrators coming in and transitions happening all at the same time. So I know there's a drive from some because we're expanding the full-day kindergarten. We have been running full-day kindergarten. It is a curriculum that's already established. I'm not sure that there's a 30-day time clock as to when we need to change kindergarten curriculum. So I won't be voting in favor of this.
Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. In lieu of the fact that we lost Dr. Moritaki, sadly, to participate in this discussion, and it was by and large a recommendation that he had brought, or had a subject that he had brought forth to the curriculum committee, and he was unfortunately absent from that discussion, and again, absent from the board's discussion of it tonight. I would like to, with the approval of my second, to withdraw my motion at this time, and if that means it goes back to committee, that's fine. This way, Dr. Moritaki will be here to ensure his views are adequately and correctly represented, and it appears as though there still remains some intent of the board, but certainly not agreement as to where it should just go right now. So in the just to expedite our meeting this evening and ensure that this gets due consideration later on, I would like to withdraw my motion and ask the second to support that withdrawal.
I'll be happy to withdraw it, but I would like the understanding that the committee can continue to work forward on developing this survey because it is time sensitive. And I wonder if we need to bring it back to the board just to get the information. I don't think anything will be necessarily taken with the survey. It's a confirmation of we're on the right track or we're not. And if we lose this window to get the information, it'll be another year before we even stop to think about it. If there's no problems, then everybody's reassured. If there are problems and our teachers are aware of it, with this survey, I think it will be something that they'll want to quickly identify and adjust. I don't think anybody will want to say, well, this is harming our children, let's keep on going, because it's a simple survey. This item in our packet has all 90 questions. They're identified by the numbers as the Common Core numbers, so that's why they're all the initials. So they're easily identified. These are the standards we use. They know at this point whether certain ones work like a charm, certain ones they have difficulty conveying to students, and others that none of their students get. So it's feedback that we need as a board to operate, and other districts are doing this. I almost think that we don't need the board's approval for getting the information. It's doing something with the information that we need the approval. So I don't know how the board feels on that.
Mrs. Oden and then Mr. Farrington.
I've made no secret, I'm not a Common Core supporter. And one of the reasons has been because there were no early childhood education people on the committee of 24 that wrote it. And the math standards, I feel, are developmentally inappropriate. And if you read a lot of the research, a lot of the experts in early childhood education believe that. I agree with Mr. Hollowell. It would be nice to have teachers get together and look at this. I think it's a great idea to have a bottom-up input. It's rather novel in education than top-down, which Common Core is. I would like our teachers to give us this information. If there's other questions they would like to see, I'd like to have them offer questions to a survey. But my biggest concern is there's probably about 15 days left of school, and this is the busiest time of the year for our teachers. They are doing cumulative records, they're doing report cards, portfolios. It's just a real busy time of the year, doing class lists and field days. It's just not a good time to be asking our teachers to do this. I think they would like to do it. That would be my input. I certainly would think, wow, it's nice as a teacher to have the ability to say what I think we should be doing, what we shouldn't, but I think it's the wrong time right now. Maybe next fall. I don't think we have a time to do it at this point. So maybe next fall we could work on it over the summer, and if kindergarten teachers had input questions they thought would be valuable, look at this and then set maybe an early release day where they can get together and go over it as a group, because I think getting the input from other teachers is important. You learn a lot when you meet with your colleagues. So I like the idea of it, but I think it's the wrong time. So, thank you.
Excuse me. So I look at this in a lot of different ways. I guess one of them is, why would we want to initiate something like this when we're going to have a complete change in administration? We don't even have the assistant superintendents who oversee these sorts of things. We have a new superintendent in who probably would like to be involved in some of this conversation. So I see it as a wrong time. You know, these comments about algebra, when I read about it, and I don't claim to be an educational expert, but when I read about it, that's to scare people, because everybody has their own recollection of what Algebra 1 was like and those formulas and how challenging it was. And I believe that what they're talking about is algebraic thinking in number sense and learning how patterns and all these sorts of things based on what I've read, which is something entirely different from Algebra 1. And so I think that it's kind of been acknowledged here this evening that this isn't anything new. We're expanding a program that's been in place for a long time. I don't think we should see this as an opportunity to begin to disassemble Common Core. I don't think you can sit here and pick through things that you don't think are appropriate in kindergarten without understanding the effect that it's going to have on 1st through 5th, 6th grade, and then subsequently on into middle and high school. We have, from time to time, I'll be generous, from time to time done things like this in isolation here in the district and then paid a price later on when we found out the unintended consequences that come from it. Some things are developmentally perhaps inappropriate for some students, but we cannot, and I've talked about this in other things that we've done, we have to do what's best for the majority of the students and then provide supports for other children who aren't quite there yet. I mean, kindergarten, that's obviously a very young age, and those children can be as much as a year apart in age and in their development emotionally, physically, and all. And so there are going to be differences amongst those children. I agree that we should have the teachers involved. That's the way I think the conversation began. If I remember correctly, when Dr. Brown first started doing this, the first group you met with were the kindergarten teachers. That's where this whole conversation began. And so I think that is where it should go. If this is going to be meaningful, I think we have to be able to look at whatever we do and be able to say that the process was objective and unbiased. And I'm going to tell you right here and now that when the only two people on the board who voted against kindergarten are leading this charge, when one of them on Facebook characterizes the kindergarten standards as being child abuse, when you can say what you want about you do or don't like Common Core, but again, this isn't about dismantling Common Core. This is about local control and deciding what's best for our students. And so I want to see less bias, more objectivity as we go through this process. I won't support any of this. And the question was asked, if it goes back to committee, will there be board support? Not from me. I want to get a new administration in place. I want them to have some input. And I want to be able to look at the public and tell the parents and the students that this was done objectively with no bias. And I can't do that tonight. Mr. Hallwell.
So two other points. If we are going to ask kindergarten teachers to come together and talk about this, or even to fill out the survey, there is the notion of when are they doing this? Is this $25 an hour time in order to fill out the survey in any meaningful way? So not just going through and checking boxes, right, but thinking about it. And then the other point is a comment was made by one of the committee members that they weren't clear on whether they needed approval from the board in order to do a survey like this, and I will tell you that I firmly believe you do, and will ask for a special Board of Education meeting if I find out that that's happening from the committee level.
And
You're tasking administration to do a task. That's very different than doing regular committee business.
One other thing that I want to bring up in my rant, and then I won't go any more. I don't think it's right to ask our kindergarten teachers to sit down and take a test and take a position on something as politically volatile as each and one of these individual standards for Common Core. I think the teachers should sit down and, excuse me, and we've got them. We've got kindergarten teachers who've done half day, who've done full day. Sit down and let the conversation begin there and let them talk about what their experiences have been. And that's where it should start, at the bottom and not driven down from the top. And so I won't support a 90-question survey either. So the motion's been withdrawn?
I've offered to withdraw.
Okay.
I second.
Mrs. Hohensee, are you going to withdraw your second?
I'm thinking about it, but I haven't as of yet.
Okay, well, we need to move on, so we have to have a
Okay.
decision.
I think what you're overlooking is Dr. Murataki was a strong proponent of this.
Mm-hmm.
He did the PowerPoint that you saw tonight. He is a strong advocate of kindergarten, and I think it's, he's just saying, let's review the standards. There are people that don't favor the standards, but we're not saying let's impose our will. We're saying we want the administration to come up with a survey. These were our suggestions. Get the feedback from our teachers so we know where we stand. Do we even have a problem? Maybe there is no problem. But one of the problems with this district is every time you put anything in as a pilot, and these standards were never voted to approve or not approve, they were just sort of put in, we never review anything. We never evaluate anything. We just keep on going. At some point, we have to reflect, and we can't just say, well, we're getting new administration, shall we just stop having all board meetings? I mean, you've got to keep things moving. We have a big district. We have a lot of students that we have responsibilities to. I don't mind if the administration adjusts this survey and works with us, but I take offense when we're told that, no review, just keep on going, it's not time, maybe next year. I think that there has to be some will on the administration's part to look at what we've put in place and just do a review, even if it's a cursory review, to sit down with teachers or just task them to give us some feedback and to see whether we even have a problem to consider.
I guess my only other, just one second. At a recent principal interview, Dr. Murtaki posed the question about not necessarily kindergarten, but reviewing, and I think you've spoken to it, reviewing all of the Common Core standards. And my recollection of the response of the principal candidate was, his sense of the teachers in the district was they've had enough unrest, enough instability, they'd like to have just a calm year where things could, everything would be settled down and they could work through it and get involved in something like that perhaps later on. That he didn't think that there was an interest in that in the buildings. And so we have to consider all of this. And I think that we've reviewed it, and I think that things obviously need to be reviewed again. But I want this to be done in the best interest of the academic interest and educational interest of the students and the teachers and the parents, not driven politically. And I've said that, and I may end up saying that at every board meeting that I have left. But I don't want the politics here. I want this to be about education and quality education. Yes?
Move the question.
There is no, there's only half a question.
No, there is a question.
You're going to stay with your, you're going to stay with your second?
Ms. O'Hensy did not withdraw her second, and therefore the motion still sits on the floor. I move the
Okay.
question.
Move the question?
I thought she said she would.
No,
That it hadn't
she was
decided.
undecided.
I'll remove it now.
I've already moved the question.
That's
So we're
fine,
going to
I
move the
understand.
question. We don't have to do a roll call now because, yes, we do, because for move the question.
Move the question.
Okay.
But I can't.
Motion is to
David's
move the
not even
question.
here.
If she's withdrawn,
I'm
why not just
withdrawing the
let it be?
question. We don't even have Dr. Murataki.
you
It's
did
his
not withdraw.
initiative. I understand in
well,
a timely
withdraw
manner.
Here we
before I
are.
made the
We're here,
motion.
so we're going to, this is sequentially correct, and so we'll vote to move the question. Please. Roll call, please.
Shall we get Dr. Murataki back on?
You've tried.
3 times you
Well,
tried.
then I'm not voting without Dr. Murataki back on.
Okay, fine.
Mrs. Oden?
No.
No? No. Dr. Murataki's not here, so Ms. Van Twyver votes yes to move the question. Mr. Hallowell?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mrs. Ziem?
No.
Ms. O'Hensy?
No.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4 from 8.
4-4?
Yes.
Motion fails.
Fails.
Okay.
Okay,
Mrs.
I'll withdraw
Hohensee-
it.
Okay, motion's with, second is withdrawn. The motion is, Mrs. Oden.
I just want to say, Mr. Hollowell made a statement about whether teachers would want to take a survey that impacted their classroom without being paid $25 an hour. We just heard early in the meeting, Mr. Boucher said 100 teachers had signed up for 2 days of professional development for writing without being paid. That's new, fairly new to the district. Teachers had always been paid for summertime professional development, $25 an hour. But we have spent so much money from Title I and Title II funds for either technology or curriculum writers, paying assistant principals to be part-time assistant principals and curriculum writers, that money has dried up, and now teachers do it on their own. And I don't think teachers would complain about filling out a survey if they thought it was going to have a positive impact on their classroom. So I would just like to defend that, because I think our teachers give us an awful lot that is pro bono.
Okay, so does that conclude the report from curriculum, Mr. Kaufman?
I have one additional comment. We also talked about competency grading. And one of the things that came up, and I will have a comment later on when we do board member comments, but Mr. McIntyre was there, and we actually asked him, and there were some concerns expressed. Mr. Sitar, a parent, was there, and there were concerns expressed around the grading. There was an article in the Nashua paper, which I will cite later on in my comments. But I did want the board to know there's still some angst out there relative to competency grading. And although this particular committee had a discussion, there were no motions that were brought forth around it. But I just want to keep the discussion alive around competency grading based on the feedback. And I was particularly troubled by the letter in the newspaper that I will read later. I don't think it's an issue that is resolved, and I think the committee will need to look at it in the future. That concludes the report.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Hohensee.
Thank you. I would like to thank Mrs. Oden for her defense of the teachers. I too think that they have a lot invested in the children, and I think that they would be willing to make a positive difference if that came to it. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, liaison reports. Mr. Hollowell, you want to jump in?
Sorry, since I apparently don't think teachers care about children, I think I'm going to have to defend myself here. My comment was simply that if, in my view, in order to do this right, teachers should meet together. And so sometimes when we do those things after school, like when we were doing the curriculum development plans, we were paying teachers $25 an hour. So my question was only, had that been considered as part of this potential? Not simply maybe filling out the survey, right? But if you're just going to fill out the survey and spend 15 minutes doing it, then you're not thinking about it. That was my point.
Okay. Moving right on, liaison reports, unfinished business.
There was
Mrs.
another
Hohensee.
Ed Council meeting. Do we have a report from Mrs. Van Twyver?
Sure,
You do?
I
Okay.
do.
Thank you.
Since I'm the only one that does liaison reports. Okay, so we met at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, May 17th. Two people were not there. Mr. Mosier couldn't make it, and David Verano was not there. The general issues, the teacher leader's invitation went out, and I have to say that I was the only one that attended that meeting. It was very, very informative. I thought it was the best one of the two that I have attended. From the middle school, there was no elementary school report because Mr. Verano was not there. So middle schools, need for more Chromebooks for standardized testing. High school has an issue too. I don't know how many times we've heard this. Just can't seem to buy enough Chromebooks. Also mentioned was they need a protocol, we would like a protocol for educating students who are absent for long periods of time. That it's very hard to catch these students up when they've been out for a month or so. And there was also a question about middle school use of Clearway next year, and I don't remember the exact answer to that. It's a no, was it? Yeah, it's a no. From the high school, the ongoing sub-issues. They've had days where there are 10 or more positions left unfilled. We've heard that many, many times. Hasn't been solved yet. E-block, there's a mess and aren't really fulfilling the original purpose. We've heard that for a long time. And attendance issues. We need an enforceable policy. That was also brought up at the leadership meeting on Saturday. That seems to be a problem with high school seniors and tardiness. And I don't remember this one. There's a celebration for an open house for retirees. I don't remember exactly what that was. Do you remember?
Those are for the end of year retiree celebrations.
Oh, the ones that we do every year. Oh, yeah, okay. That's typical. That's the report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. E.
I would just like to apologize to the teachers union. I moved this weekend. I didn't have one speck of energy to do anything more than what I did. Your meetings have always been valuable, and please don't think that I don't appreciate them. I certainly do. I'm just sorry I couldn't make it this weekend. Thank you.
Unfinished business? New business, Edmund Keefe Auditorium Commission, renomination of two members. One is Sean, I lost the name of the other person.
Mr. Schneider. Move to reappoint Mr. Smith for an additional term ending in 2018 and Mr. Schneider for an additional term ending in 2019 to the Auditorium Commission.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is approved. They are renominated. Brentwood request for planning time. Anybody want to speak to this?
Well, I'll speak very briefly.
Okay.
Mrs. Greenberg approached me with a request for planning time for the Brentwood staff for next year. I asked her to put that into the form of a memo and to address that to you. She did that. She has laid out here how some of the history when Nashua program was developed. They had some additional planning time. They have looked at student behavior, and now they'd like to begin working on some curriculum and do some cross-curricular activities. So they're recommending that the students be released 90 minutes early, twice a month. So that's the motion.
Mrs. Oden.
I won't support this. I think every teacher in the district would like to have extra 2 90-minute blocks per month to work with their teammates. And I think this would set a precedent where other teachers would want the same thing, and I don't blame them. They have a very challenging population, but they have a very small population. And when you look at the attendance rates for Brentwood, I would think a lot of days you don't have more than a handful of students there, maybe 9 or 10. So I'm not going to support this.
Come right around. Mrs. Hohensee, Mrs. Zine.
Thank you. I'd just like to know, do they get the 90-minute free lunch, and do they have planning periods already, or is this the first chance they get to breathe all day? I just want clarification on that, if you could.
It's my understanding that their schedule is somewhat more flexible, that they may not have every day the 90 minutes that another teacher at the high school might have for a planning period, given the nature of the population that you've just described.
Thank you.
Mrs. Zine.
I guess I would just have to agree with Mrs. Oden wholeheartedly. I remember when they gave us the report on attendance, it was disarming. It was, I think I remember one of the students had missed 71 days. It's very hard for me with that small a population to, I definitely will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
We have no motion yet.
Oh. Well, if it becomes a motion, I won't support it.
Can I?
We can. Yes.
I'd move that it be sent to the curriculum committee and have them discuss with Brentwood whether that's appropriate or not.
Second.
I think it's a good idea, because I have some questions about what they have currently in the schedule and how that all works. And so, all those in favor of referring it to curriculum, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Transition plan accommodations. Not knowing where this is going to go, I don't know if this is going to require non-public. Is that Mrs. Hohensee?
I was the one that argued to put it on the agenda. You were the one that tried to argue that it wasn't necessary, that you had had some discussions, so we didn't need to. But it's my understanding that Dr. Mosley has been coming to our district to oversee the principal search at Bicentennial, and now is involved in 2 searches for assistant superintendents. He does this because he's trying to find the best leaders for our district. Last summer, we reimbursed Mrs. Susing for her efforts interviewing candidates even after she retired from the district. We appreciated her help, but we didn't expect her to volunteer her services. So I hope that the board would consider an arrangement to compensate Dr. Mosley for his time and effort. And I'd like to thank Dana O'Gara for reaching out and working with him during this transition period. But there may be more accommodations might be needed, and maybe we'd send it to committee to discuss it further. But I just want the board to be aware that we should do something in this area that we haven't done to date. Thank you.
Mr. Donovan.
Yeah, is Sharon paying him now when he comes up here?
I don't know.
Well, if they are, then why do we want to pay them more? Since they don't have any money.
I don't think we want to go in.
That's all I'm saying. There's no extra money, we've seen that.
Okay.
If he's getting paid, why do we want to pay him more?
Okay,
He's not working
okay,
both
thank you.
places, he's
Thank-
working one.
Okay.
Thank you, Sharon, for paying.
Mr. Donovan, thank you. Has anyone had a conversation with Dr. Mosley about any of this? Mrs. Zine,
I'll try to be careful what I say.
please.
You all know that I voted for Dr. Mosley. I'm delighted to have him coming, but I don't always agree with Mr. Donovan, but on matters of money, we don't have any money. That's just that simple. If I had money, but we don't have any money. We're always, we don't have money for our classrooms. We don't have money for Chromebooks. We don't have money, from what I get, we don't even have money for supplies. So I have to believe that Dr. Mosley understands that, and I hope that he will not feel slighted that I would not vote to pay money that we don't have. Thank you.
Okay. Public comments.
I have,
Did you have something else under new business?
business.
Okay, go ahead.
yes, thank you. Get my notes.
We'll get to you in a minute, Mr. Marcoux.
I request permission from the board to contact Vice President, I forget his exact title, over at the New Hampshire Community College in order to get data about our students who attend National Community College. So move to request, I don't know, make a motion to request permission, but I'd like to speak to this if I may.
Second for discussion.
What was the motion?
To request permission from the board to contact Vice President, and I can provide his name to you, Philip, but I don't remember his last name and his specific title, at the Nashua Community College in order to get data about our students who go on to study at NCC.
Ms. Hall.
Just a clarification on the motion. So is it, so they've in the past had test results, like remediation tests? Is it that kind of thing? that we're
If
talking
I can, yeah, I'm trying to understand, I had a state rep come over to me at the Dr. Mosley meet and greet, and he said that this had been done in the past, that there's data available from the community college where they can report on our graduates, how they enter, what remediation is required at the community college, further data along, what kinds of programs are they taking, how long are they in those programs. And I'm trying to get a full picture about our graduates. So I've asked for previous information, the National Clearinghouse data, the NESDEC data. I'm trying to understand what happens to our students when they graduate. And community college is right in our backyard, and we feed them.
So I'm sympathetic to your cause because I've done this, I've tried to do this in the past. I'm not sure whether it's this current administration. I know when Mr. Conrad was here that there were discussions that were going on behind the scenes, but it seemed like when you pushed on it, it made the reverse happen. And so I think there are discussions that go on in the district, at least when Mr. Conrad was here, between NCC and the high schools about what's working, what's not working. But it seems that they like to keep that informal because there's no requirement. It's just like, it's like our FERPA data. They have no requirement to share their data with the Nashua School District, right?
And if I could, what I was going to suggest in this, and I think that the more data we have, the better. But I think it's more appropriate that that be done between administrations, between our administration and their administration, not having board members going over there and doing that. And so if you wanted to request from our administration that they establish some sort of a communication, or if you wanted to wait a month and then just do it with the new administration and ask them to set up some lines of communication, give them the kinds of things that you're looking for, that I think that might be very appropriate. But I don't think it's appropriate to send a board member over there and start asking
So
questions.
what I did was I reached out to somebody over there, and he said he'd be happy to consider, if I sent him an email with my request, he'd happy to have it reviewed by their powers that be before he could fulfill it. I did ask the question, do you have data like this? And his answer was yes. Do they release it or not? That's the $64,000 question. Those of you old enough to remember that TV show know what I'm talking about. So I don't have a problem deferring to the future, and I will advise him of that we're in the changing leadership at the district, and as soon as we can reground ourselves, that we'll be reaching. If it's okay if I send that email, I mean, I wanted to be transparent about my communication, and because I know I don't represent the board.
No, and I appreciate that, and I think that if we can have a conversation with administration and just develop a format for all of this and how we're going to gather it and what we're looking for, so we can get standardized input, whether it be from there or from UNH or any of the schools around. So, but I would prefer, I think it's more appropriate for for that to be an administrative function.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring it up.
Mr. Hall?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, all of us do that at certain points where you're talking to people and something comes up, right? So I'm just saying we should probably be a little careful about what we ask for, because somebody might hand it to us, but they may not be authorized, right? So we just should be careful about that.
No, he was very clear that please send me your request and I will get approval. And if I get approval, I will work with you to, but the point is the data does exist. So I think it will, and if we wait a month or two to reach out to them, that's fine too.
Yeah, so I guess I would say whoever your curriculum liaison ends up being in curriculum, right? You're in curriculum, yeah. That maybe we should work together for what that. With
No, I think it's a good
administration.
conversation to have.
Yeah, no, I think it's.
You're more
it's great
data guy than
to
I
have.
am,
It
so
is,
I'm
yeah.
interested in what you're thinking.
Mrs. Hohensee?
Thank you. Another approach to the same question might be to approach the Department of Education. I know they have a statewide longitudinal database where they keep all sorts of statistical data, and they might be tracking, because they do have colleges in on the data system. They might have the information that you seek
There you go.
Okay.
in a usable format that's easier to grab.
Okay, so I'll speak to Kathy about that.
Okay, anything else under new business,
Sorry,
Mr.
and
Hall?
it could be one of those things that Kathy will be able to see, but board members won't, right? So that happens often.
Okay.
Administration can see.
Anything else under new business?
It is the motion on the floor.
There is?
Motion,
withdraw.
contact NCC to get date.
It's withdrawn.
I just withdrew it, Mr. Pantoiver.
Okay. So have you guys settled who's going to go first? Okay, public comment.
Hi, my name is Dan Howes. I am a Title I teacher at Amherst Street School, and I'm also Vice President of the Nashua Teachers Union. And for the purposes of this meeting, I guess my address is 7C Taggart Drive. But I want to come up here and thank those members who asked thoughtful questions about how Title I money is spent. And here's the reason why I'm up here to say that. I am a teacher and I work directly with students. That means I see about 25 students every day. It varies a little bit through the years because sometimes students do well and they don't need to see me anymore. Other times students move in or a need develops and I pick up more. But I help 25 students a day learn to be better readers. I see students go from in first grade not knowing all their letters or what sounds they make to I'm at the end of the year. I've got first graders who are reading on grade level now, and I'm very proud of them. Of my 25 students, 2/3 of them have made at least a year's growth, and maybe another third have made closer to a year and a half growth. I don't work with just first graders. I work all the way up through 5th grade. The reason I'm telling you all this is because I think it is very important to question how Title I money is being spent. I know the grant is written, and sometimes money is set aside for technology, and quite possibly that is what was in this proposal here, money that was set aside in the grant. And I'm not asking anyone to go against how the grant is currently written, but please, as time goes on, think about that. Does that money have to be written as a set aside for technology? Next year, there will be 5 fewer teachers providing direct services to students like I do every day. 5 fewer. We're hoping maybe the grant will be a little higher and we'll get some of them back. But if we're spending $238,000 on technology, when you're telling 125 to 150 students that they won't get an extra reading lesson, that's on top of what they do in the classroom. It's what helps them accelerate and make that at least a year's growth and maybe a year and a half worth of growth. And I know one of your big goals is having students reading and doing math on grade level by grade 3. So I just urge you to keep asking questions about how the Title I money is spent, and if there's any way to keep more of it in direct services to students. Chromebooks are wonderful. I use them with my students. But without my guidance, my students are looking at videos if they possibly can get away with it. The Chromebook is a nice tool, but it needs a trained, experienced teacher to help the students learn to capture their thoughts in writing, to use appropriate links to further their research and knowledge on a topic, or even just to follow their interest that's been sparked by something they've read in a book I've given them. So please keep asking questions, and whenever you can, make sure that the people who work directly with the students are given consideration, because that's what makes the growth with the students. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Another resident from Taggart Drive here?
Where'd my chair go with wheels?
I don't like to get comfortable.
No, it's true. Adam Marcoux, president of the Nashua Teachers Union. I live at 4 Jalori Lane in Nashua. I'm here to talk about one of my favorite topics is kindergarten. The survey presented at the curriculum meeting that I watched from home, it was different than the one that was in the slideshow and included 0 questions created by teachers. So I'm curious where the bottom-up effect is with that. When we rewrote curriculum for 5 years of teachers in administration, we did it during the school day, 10 days a year. Then that was shut down because the teachers were out of their classrooms too much and we had too many subs and we paid too much for subs. And then they moved it to after school, but no one was going because you just worked a full day. And if we change the curriculum, I'm just curious as what we're going to have. Kindergarten is the foundation of the house. And if you change the foundation and don't look at first grade, second grade, third grade, and so on, then we have a problem. I'm not suggesting that everything we teach is perfect. It was never perfect with the GLEs. It's not perfect now. It will never be perfect because it's fluid, because things change and we have to adapt. We haven't had time to adapt. We changed our curriculum, our report cards, our trimesters, our whatever else we changed. Too much, too fast, and we're still dealing with the repercussions of that. The survey was mentioned as a simple 90-question survey. Anyone see anything simple about that? There was a comment that teachers don't read the GLEs, I'm sorry, the standards. If you walk into 99% of the classrooms in this district, those standards are posted in kid-friendly language, so it's easy to discuss with students what is expected of them. Sometimes I don't think the teachers in this district are given enough credit for what they do above and beyond their jobs every day. I can guarantee that every teacher in this district has read the standards they teach at least once, if not more, because that's how they build their lessons every day to teach our kids. I don't think a survey right now is going to get you anything that's going to be helpful. I think we have 18 school days left. 15. With report cards, cume folders. The end of the year is probably the most stressful time of the school year for educators. When we changed curriculum and other things, the teachers were the ones that were driving those conversations when it was determined we needed to change. Regardless of what the state said or didn't say, regardless of if it was a mandate or not, when the process was underway, and that was the route we had to go, it was the teachers and the curriculum specialists that were making the decisions for this district that they brought and presented to the board, because they're the ones that have the education and the knowledge to make those decisions at the best interest of our students. I don't think any teacher or curriculum specialist has ever written curriculum that they would be used as child abuse or negatively impact a student. Every student comes into school at a different place, regardless of what grade level it is, and they leave at a different place. I think that we need to utilize the educators in our district to make decisions from the bottom up instead of the Board of Education dictating how we run our school district. I think if you want to be in the business of running a school district, you should be educated in how to run a school district and how to educate a student. If you're not, then let us know. Let us who know how to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comment?
No idea.
Name and address.
Gwen McCaleb, 11 Apple Tree Green in Nashua.
Got a little green light? Got it.
Sorry. Gwen McCaleb, 11 Apple Tree Green in Nashua. And I just wanted to take a moment, reiterate my invitation to everyone on the Board of Education to come to Nashua High School South's Evening of Swing this Saturday evening at 7 o'clock. I had an email response from Mrs. Oden. Thank you so much. And I have two kids in the music program in Nashua, one in the middle school and one in the high school. And between the both of them, I've been to probably 30 concerts this year, not counting their other extracurricular musical activities. And I'm disappointed that this year I actually have to miss this evening of swing. So I made a promise to myself and to the music director at Nashua High School South that I would help him promote it. And so I'm reiterating that invitation. It is a wonderful evening of swing, jazz, big band music, dancing. They clear out the cafeteria at the school. People from all over Nashua, from retirement communities show up, people who really know how to do these dances and just have a really good time. So polish your dancing shoes, bring a partner, and come out and show your support for the Nashua High School Jazz Band.
Great, thank you.
You
Thank
may
you.
find it hard to believe, but there's actually people watching. So say again when it is and where it is.
It's this Saturday evening at Nashua High School South in the cafeteria. Tickets are $10 at the door, $5 for seniors and students.
What time?
7 till 10. I hope you're there.
Thank you. Anyone else on public comment? Let's see, I put away my agenda here. Oh, board member comments. We'll just start over here and come around. Mr. Mosier?
Thank you. You know, I looking at the thing about the kindergarten, and it made me think back a few years, approximately until 1940. And we didn't have any such things as the standards, but we had a good reader, we had good teachers, we learned to read, write, and do arithmetic in the usual way. And we all graduated. We had Regents tests and got into high school, and there were some of us from the school that became engineers, and I think from one of my class there was a guy who was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. So, I mean, we did pretty good for, not having Common Core and surveys. I think that one of the things that this district does right now is it has too many surveys. We're surveying everything. The only thing we haven't surveyed is what did everybody have for lunch yesterday. So I think that we have to be careful with the amount of surveys that we do, because teachers will say, oh, there's another one. Check off this box, check that box, check that box. And we don't want that. We want to have something meaningful where we get some important data from the survey, something that we can use either in our committees or in our board meetings. So many things that I've listened to over here, my colleagues, both male and female, some of them have some very good ideas, and I thank them for their wisdom and input for what they're doing. And of course, with our big paycheck every year, that means a lot. So thank you all. We have a good time. And next meeting, don't forget to bring the pizza. Thank you.
Ms. Soden.
I want to piggyback on what Gwen said, because I've been to swing night. I missed it last year. Matter of fact, I thought they didn't hold it. I didn't realize that they had it. I had gone to the previous 2 years. They have light refreshments, even if people just want to go and listen. But what is just absolutely amazing about that jazz band is they are almost at a professional level. They have a program, they have sets of swing music. They tell you who it is, if it's Benny Goodman or who it is, and they play for hours. It's just amazing the level of musicians we have at our high school. So if anybody wants to go, as I said, you don't need to dance. You can sit at tables, have light refreshments. I have seen people do that. Great music. I don't think you'll be bored at all. So if you don't have anything to do Saturday night, it would be entertainment. Deb House spoke to the Title I teachers. I think we probably have lost 8 Title I teachers in the last 2 or 3 years. 8 teachers. I want you to realize these Title I teachers support the classroom teacher, support the students that are having reading difficulty. They work part-time. They do not get health care. They don't get that benefit, and they contribute enormously to success of students. If she's saying she has 100 to 150 a year that she's helping, think what the damage of 8 is doing. We can't do everything, but I believe our money ought to be focused on students. I'll take a teacher over a computer any day. I had the opportunity to go on the trolley tour that Mr. Zanetti, the history teacher at Nashua High North, gave the other day. His students presented some history as we rode around on the trolley in the city. I think for me, one of the most interesting things, I never realized that Mount Pleasant was the first high school in the city. That came as a surprise. So I want to thank them, and they did a great job. Matter of fact, Grace Tomasetti, who's on the student board representative from North, was one of the contributors, and she did a great job. Today I had the opportunity to go to the flag ceremony here at North that was presented put together by the National Honor Society. It was moving, so well done, and just a real tribute to those that have given so much for all of us. So congratulations to the Nashua High North Honor Society for their organizing and presenting a nice program this morning. Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Hornsey.
Thank you. I too would like to thank Nashua North for the trolley tour. That was excellent. The students really seemed to enjoy what they were doing, and it was a lot of fun. I'd just like to make it clear that kindergarten is a foundation, and we need to make sure we have a good foundation. So periodic review is necessary. Our intention in committee was to allow teachers to make decisions in the best interest of their students. That's all.
Mrs. Ziem.
I'm going to make this short and sweet. I think we have the best teachers in the United States and globally in the nation, in the whole world. So always know that no matter how you may disagree with any of these board members, I do think all of the board members know that we are lucky to have the teachers that we have. Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman.
Thanks. I have a couple of things. I too was on the trolley tour and found it quite informative. I'd also like to acknowledge the hard work and effort of the Nashua North Honor Society. This morning they hosted a tribute to our men and women in uniform, past and present. I want to acknowledge their work and thank them for the many expressions of service they perform in our community. In speaking with the young students today, Gabby, I'm sorry I don't recall your last name, but she spoke to the various things they do in the community with the food bank and many, many other projects. The middle school, I'm sorry, the juniors at the high school have a separate program from the seniors, and they each, in addition to group projects, have individual projects. So these young people are all over the community really working to improve it. The next thing I'd like to address is competency grading. And I have a little bit of a statement, and then I want to read a letter to the editor that was in this weekend's Telegraph. It's clear to me, based on comments made at the May 15th Curriculum Committee by parents, by student, that additional discussion and evaluation is needed regarding competency grading. Here's the text of the letter to the editor. I would ask those students who wrote the letter to the editor and the concerned parents and would voice their concerns directly to the board. I would also ask Dr. Moritaki to add competency grading to a future curriculum and evaluation committee. Here's the text of the letter to the editor. I am not going to mention the student names that are in the article, but I will just read what it's really not that long. So it's from this immediate past Sunday, May 28th. It's called Keeping Up with Competencies. Nikhil Prasad. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was the writer at the Telegraph, but that's a student. Although it has been 2 years since the start of the new competency system, students still regard it with skepticism. Many students are unhappy with the changes in grading, and teachers aren't enjoying the process of entering numerous grades in various competencies. Sophomore says that, quote, the system is messy, confusing, and needs improvement. The recent improvement in only allowing recovery up to a B- has made certain students upset because there's no longer a possibility to improve from an A or an A- to an A+. The competency system has made it almost impossible to get an A+ in class unless almost every single assessment is an A+. Another sophomore says, quote, teachers don't agree on the system and they all interpret it differently, so it's harder to get accurate proportional grades. Concerned students and parents have been providing lots of feedback on competencies, but there is no change in sight. The issues are not With the system, the issues are inconsistencies between teachers, says a sophomore. Another reason why students are not big fans is because it has brought down grade inflation, meaning it's now harder to get an A. The main concern for seniors, however, is how this system affects their chances of getting into college. The GPA generally goes down because of the new recovery adjustment, and the students who want to get into top-tier schools still have a chance, only now it's a little harder. Hopefully the Board of Ed recognizes these problems and rectifies them to alleviate student stress. So thank you for the letter to the editor. I wish you would have sent it directly to the board. I would invite these students and their parents to bring their voice heard to the board, because if there's been a lot of feedback on competencies, it hasn't made it to the board level. So thank you very much.
Nothing, Mr. Lowell? John Twyver, you're up.
Yes, thank you. I don't know whether you read about the tiles that were created at Amherst Street School in the e-news, but I've been working with Debbie Goida with her afternoon program, after-school program, and she took me down to see these tiles, and I was just aghast. They are the most beautiful tiles. They're clay with metallic paint on them, and they're arranged in such a way, and the creativity these children have is absolutely amazing. So I would ask you to, if you have a few minutes sometime, to drop by. I think there's 4 or 5 of them, and they're huge. But I was so impressed with the artwork that's done in this district. I did attend the Leadership Day on a Saturday that the NT Union put on, and of the 2 times that I've gone, this was the most, I think it was great. They had topics on teachers' salaries. They had another topic on compulsory community service for graduation. There was one on writing intervention. There was one on tardiness. And unfortunately, I can't remember the others because I can't find my paper. I looked for hours today. But a lot of good ideas that were presented. And you'll be able to watch that on YouTube and also hopefully on ETV soon. I asked them to hurry it up so the board could hear before the end of the year. The other thing that I want to do is to thank our student members of this board for hosting the program Policy Matters that's viewed on ETV. It's done 2 weeks before the meeting, the board meeting or the policy meeting, to let you know what's coming up. And it is a project of the ETV, this CTE program. I get my acronyms all messed up. They're using it as a school project, and they've done a wonderful job. They're doing an excellent job, and I'm so thankful that they were willing to do it. Maybe sometime we can add a little to this where you could debate the policies. So that might be a next year project. So I want to thank them. I understand that we have other liaisons in this board, and I understand that there is a wellness liaison. I have never heard a report from this committee, but yet there is information that's coming up next policy meeting on wellness. There's also liaisons to the student members or their Senate committees. I'm not sure which it was. Never hear a report on that. And if I seem a little bit irritated that I keep getting asked about doing a liaison report, it's because I don't hear that other people are doing their job either. So sorry for my curtness about it, but maybe we will get these reports in the future. Thank you, that's it.
Mrs. Oden forgot something.
No, I just want to ask, I'm on the Health and Wellness Committee, and they had a meeting this past week, and I missed it because they changed the HR committee from 3 to 5, and the meeting was 4:30 to 5:30, so I missed the Health and Wellness, so that's my fault. So I apologize.
How often do they meet, Mrs.
Well, let's not get into big debate. Everybody, this is just comment. So we're all set.
Sorry?
I guess two things. Just two things. Quickly on competency-based grading. There's no doubt that we need to continue to refine it. But I'm not convinced that cutting back on inflated grading is a problem. If I want the students' grades to reflect what they've learned on the subject area, not what a nice poster they made of where the mom baked some brownies to bring in. And as far as being able to get into significant schools, this year we have 2 students going to MIT, 2 going to University of California, Berkeley, 1 Stanford, Princeton, Carnegie Mellon, Georgetown, Wellesley, Vanderbilt, Olin College of Engineering, Wake Forest University, Rice University, Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Bentley University, Rutgers, Rochester Institute of Technology, just a brief cross-section of some of the schools they're getting into, so it doesn't seem to be holding them all back. So, again, we need to refine it, but it seems to be working for some of the students. Got to make sure it works for everybody. I did the trolley ride. It was great. Grace did a nice presentation. The flag ceremony was very good this morning. I found an escape from all these meetings. Last week, I spent the afternoon in a kindergarten class. And I want to thank Mrs. G, they refer to her as, because I'll try and pronounce her name, you'll see why. Mrs. G.M. Petruzzi. I got a thumbs up. She allowed me to spend the afternoon in her kindergarten class, and it was delightful. With all this conversation, I wanted to go in and see firsthand what goes on. I started at the drop-off point. There's nothing cuter than these little kids jumping out of the cars, slinging the backpack over their shoulder, big grin on their face, running in to get into class. It's quite a workout for the teacher. You know, I noticed she was sitting, she was kneeling, she was standing, she was walking, she was kneeling, she was sitting and standing, and the kids were great. Obviously, a lot of different levels, but those levels seem to be being addressed by either the teacher or the paras that were working there assistant. There was a Title I teacher in there for a while. It was delightful, and now I've got to get into a full-day class to see how the time is utilized when you can expand it, because it was a busy morning. The kids had a great time, and they were terrific. Having said all of that, it's getting late. Clock on the wall says it's time to
adjourn.
Seconded by Mrs. Oden. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're adjourned at, pick a time, 9:27?